Hey, good day, folks. Welcome to another episode of Andrew's Life. We're going to be driving through the town of Galveston, Indiana. And I don't really have a whole lot to say on this one, so I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and then you guys can enjoy the remainder of the video. Enjoy the ride around. Galveston, Indiana is located in Cass County. It is located 7 miles south of here. You'll have Kokomo, Indiana. 17 miles north to the northwest, you'll have Logansport, which I will have that video coming up in the near future. And about 69 miles south, you got Indianapolis, which is going to be the closest metro area that you'll have to Galveston. And off the cuff, I would say the only negative part about living here is the fact that you are further away from any metro areas. And again, for some of you, that may not matter one way or another. Some of you would even prefer to live further away from metro areas. But I would say if you're a 9-to-5 worker, depending on what occupation that you're working, that could be a bit problematic when it comes to your job choices. Even some of you that have a business acumen about yourself, depending on what kind of business that you desire to create, it could also be a bit of a challenge to be that far from larger cities. But if you don't have any need to be real close to larger economies, then I would say all in all, this seems like a nice quiet place to live. I mean, it's a nice quiet place to live. I mean, you do have some amenities here in town. You do have a couple of gas stations. You got a couple of different places to go and grab you a bite to eat as well. For all your shopping and all your basic amenities, you're only 7 miles outside Kokomo, so those are all pluses of living here. And if you're looking for the small town atmosphere, I mean, the population here is sitting at 1,288 people, down from 1,311 people back in 2010 census. So as of the 2020 census, the population has went down by 1.8%. And your racial demographics are 95.6% white, 2.5% Native American, 1.3% Hispanic. And if you're looking to rent, your median rent prices are going to go from $710 to $1,160 a month. If you're looking to own, your median home prices are at $157,000. But I will say, if you're looking for anything much lower than a few $100,000, good luck. I mean, the housing market in this area appears to be fairly busy. A lot of the houses that I've seen in this area are currently pending an offer. So clearly it's a highly sought after area that a lot of people are wanting to move to, and quite frankly, I do not blame them. I'm not trying to throw shade at Kokomo, but anymore, as I've kind of predicted, I would say maybe a year ago. I just never really elaborated on it. In fact, I don't think I talked about it much at all on this channel, but it is a prediction that I kind of made, and I just kind of kept it to myself. And the prediction is that as a lot of your larger metro areas continue to get more and more expensive year over year when it comes to housing, as your larger cities continue to do more and more gentrification, you're going to have people that are, you're going to have many of your working class people, such as myself and many of you, that are no longer going to be able to afford to live in the desirable parts of your larger metro areas. And most of us are not going to be able to afford to live in any of the suburbs nearby either. So, what do you do? What have many people been doing? A lot of people have either been moving to smaller cities like Kokomo, or if you don't mind being a little further out, if you don't mind doing a little bit of job and get to your basic amenities, you'll have smaller towns like Galveston that some of us will move to. Now, when it comes to your smaller to mid-sized cities such as Kokomo, Muncie, Anderson, and Marion, and of course I'm talking about Indiana because this is an Indiana video. So when it comes to many of your smaller to mid-sized cities that are within an hour of a larger metro area, such as Indianapolis or Fort Wayne, or Louisville or Chicago. I mean, what's going on more and more is you got a lot of people that are moving to the cities I named a second ago, like Kokomo, Marion, and Anderson, and Muncie, because you got people that, they don't want to live out in the sticks. They're not able to afford the suburbs. Clearly, they're not able to afford the metro. They're priced out of the metro. So those are the kind of cities that they're moving to. They're moving to your smaller cities that are located within an hour of the metro. Now, the unfortunate part is some of the undesirables that may have been living in larger cities like Indianapolis or Fort Wayne, as many of them get priced out of the metro, you got many of them that are moving to your Kokomos and Andersons and Muncies and your Marions and so on and so forth. And basically, the riffraff that they may have caused in cities like, let's say, Indianapolis, now they're bringing it to Anderson and Kokomo and Marion. And now they're causing the same issues in those cities. And since those cities that they're going to are a lot smaller, the crime in the smaller cities are going to actually, in ways, the crimes in some of these smaller cities are going to actually end up being worse than what they may have been in Indianapolis or Fort Wayne, or even Chicago. Because you're dealing with a much smaller city, you're dealing with a much smaller law enforcement force, a much smaller government overall, and many of these smaller cities are not going to have the proper resources to fight against certain type of crime. Many of your law enforcement personnel aren't even going to be properly trained to deal with certain kind of crime because they're not used to it. It's not anything that has happened in their city on a regular basis. Now, I'm pretty sure as time goes by, eventually they'll grow accustomed to it and they'll have the resources at some point necessary to fight against it. But I would say right now, many of these smaller cities are not going to have those type of resources right now. They're just not. So I would say right now, and that's what's going on in many of your smaller cities. I mean, I have heard people, both on this channel, as well as in person, as well as even some of my friends and family complain about the crime in many of these smaller cities increasing. And some of these places are starting to make it more and more on your evening news. As where before, you cut your evening news on, you really didn't hear as much about Kokomo or Marion or Anderson. As where now you cut it on, you're starting to hear about those cities more and more. In certain areas in, let's say, Indianapolis and in Fort Wayne, that a few years ago may have been off the charts as far as crime, some of those areas are actually beginning to get their act together and they're cleaning up. And now you have a whole different caliber of people moving to those communities. So, yeah, that's why I say I do not blame people who, now Galveston, although Galveston does have a population decline, I do predict by the next census that number will probably change into a population increase. Because Galveston, I think, is going to be one of those type of cities to where you're going to have people that are going to be leaving Kokomo and they're going to be leaving Logansport and they're going to move to these smaller towns because they're not going to want to deal with the riffraff. Am I saying that Kokomo and cities like Kokomo are all bad? Not at all. What I will say, however, is if you don't have the proper amount of money to purchase in the right type of neighborhoods in Kokomo and in Anderson and in Logansport, you're going to be liable to buy something and be in the hood. Or even if you're just looking to rent. Again, if you don't got the proper amount of money to rent, you're going to be liable to rent something that's going to be in the hood. So for many people, especially people who desire to be a homeowner, in effort to find a place to live and to potentially stay and not have to move, you got a lot of us that are looking into these small towns like Galveston, like yeah. But anyways, I'm not even talking about it. But anyways, like I was saying, you got a lot of people like myself that are looking into many of these small towns that are close by smaller cities, because it's our last ditch effort to find a community that's still affordable, but at the same time quiet and safe. And despite the fact that many of these super small towns lack amenities, the fact that we have to drive a little further to gain access to basic amenities such as grocery stores and places to take our vehicle for service, that type of stuff. There's certain people like myself that rather drive those extra few miles, and we rather drive the extra 10 to 20 miles each way to get to our jobs in many cases, in order to live somewhere that's quiet and safe and at the same time still affordable, as opposed to living in a larger city or even a smaller city where you're going to pay more for your house and you're going to pay more for property taxes. You're not going to get as much land. The square footage of your home is going to be smaller. And your neighborhood and the quality of the neighborhood is not going to be as good. So there's people like myself that, you know what, that's one of the main reasons why people like myself desire to live in small towns. I ain't gonna lie to you folks. I'm gonna tell you flat out, and I am not ashamed to say it. I do not have the money to live decently in the metro here in Indiana. And I certainly hell don't have the money necessary to live in any of the suburbs. I'm gonna just tell you guys flat out, I just don't got that kind of money. Now, if I wanted to live in the metro in, let's say, Alabama, yeah, I could afford that. But to be quite frank, I have no desire to live in Montgomery, Birmingham, or Mobile. Huntsville is in better shape than those other cities I just named off, but quite frankly, when it comes to a major city, I don't even have the desire to live in Huntsville. So, it is what it is. That's just how I feel. All right, folks, that's all I got to say on this one. Hopefully you guys got something out of the commentary. Hopefully you can also go ahead and enjoy the remainder of this video and go ahead and drop a comment below. Let's start up a conversation, ask whatever questions you want to ask. And until next time, stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next video.